Hello folks, it's Darren Chang and I'm here to give you a follow-up on the Tortuga set out. I took this bag on a 4-day trip to Austin, Texas. Pretty nice warm weather there, given that right now I'm in the middle of a snowstorm here in Connecticut. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how well this served as a one-bag travel option, as well as how well it did as my everyday bag once I got to Austin. All right, so you may recall that I have a whole series of videos where I determined that this Tortuga was the bag that I was going to go with if I decided that I was doing this one bag travel philosophy. And I don't think I made the wrong decision, but I will tell you that it's not perfect in all ways. It's great in some ways, but it's not perfect. So let's talk a little bit about how this all went. So first and foremost, it was terrifically easy to pack this bag because of its gigantic volume. And I followed the lead. This is a laundry bag. I have a couple of packing cubes. I followed the lead of a lot of folks online who do a lot of this one bag travel. And this idea of using the packing cubes is actually shockingly brilliant. It really allows you to pack stuff efficiently. Nothing gets packed down to the bottom of the bag. It all stays contained in each of these bags. And then when you get to your destination, indeed it is obviously a piece of cake to just grab out these things, toss them into the drawer in the hotel room, and then empty this out and maybe use this, as you know my intention was, to use this as my daily carry. So in fact, I did go for the cubes, and this is something I would strongly recommend that everybody does. Okay, so if you may recall, one of the things that I really wanted to have this bag do was to be my daily carry. And so I wanted to have these compression straps, which you can see here on the sides, be able to shrink down that main compartment, because ultimately I wasn't going to be using that main compartment for anything once I got to Austin and dumped out all my clothing and toiletries and such. And in fact, I removed, at that point when I got to the destination, I removed these waist belts. But let me actually talk a little bit about the waist belts. Indeed, and when you're going through the airport or you're moving from where you parked your car to the gate, it is great to have something take the weight of your pack other than your shoulders. And so indeed, these hip belts did just that. And I will tell you that the hip belts themselves are extraordinarily comfortable, and they're well padded. They shaped around my body really nicely. The one thing I will tell you, however, is that the combination of the hip belts with the shoulder straps is not perfect, because my body length is a little bit longer, I think, perhaps than most. I mean, not probably most. I'm 6 feet tall. It's not like I have an unusual body size. But what I felt was that it was impossible for me to have the weight of the pack being taken by the hip belt and have my shoulder straps fit on me correctly. Essentially what I'm telling you here is that if I could have moved the shoulder straps a little further up on the pack, so separate the distance between the hip belt and the shoulder straps, it would have fit me much better than it did. As it was, if I had my shoulder straps tightened up so that the pack itself was right up against my back here, which is really what you want to do if you're moving quickly, I really couldn't do that and have the hip belt take the weight of the pack, because if you do that, if you cinch this down, then obviously the shoulder straps are taking a bunch of the weight. I think what Tortuga needs to design in their next iteration of the set out is to have the load lifters. Because what load lifters do is they allow you to lift up the shoulders a bit more, like so that in a sense it does increase the distance between my shoulders and the hip belt. So having that sort of thing is really essential. And in fact, I might even have somebody install those, somebody who's qualified to do this kind of a thing, install load lifters onto these to be able to do that, because I think it would make such a huge difference. Otherwise, Tortuga might want to consider doing what they do, I think, with their other bags, which is to have these shoulder straps be adjustable in terms of where they fall relative to the hip belt. You can actually adjust it up and down on the actual back of the pack, which I think probably is, well, That's probably the best way to go, but I still think having load lifters isn't such a bad thing to have. The other thing that I was surprised by is that the design of the sternum strap, which ultimately you really do need to use if you're cruising through the airport and carrying the weight of the bag here, the design is such that because, and this is probably the case for most of these sternum straps, because the sternum strap actually is anchored in the middle of the shoulder strap, when you connect the two pieces together, what happens is the shoulder strap itself, it tends to twist in like this, so that this front edge here presses up against your chest, and the outer edge here lifts up slightly because of the way it's designed. In some bags, what you have is the connection point entirely wraps around the whole shoulder strap. So it goes from the front, around the outside edge, and then around the back of the shoulder strap itself. So that when it pulls it together, it simply slides together parallel like that, instead of tipping and pulling in, which essentially these do. And so what happened with me putting the shoulder strap or the sternum strap on is I would always feel it digging in to my chest, which wasn't terrifically comfortable. So I really do think it would be a better idea for them to redesign how the shoulder strap is implemented, and the sternum strap and shoulder straps combination would be implemented so it doesn't do that funny digging in pressure that I inevitably felt whenever I used it. All right, so the big pockets here are awesome. Being able to put my wallet into the pocket associated with this hip belt, incredibly convenient. Unfortunately, I do have an iPhone 7 Plus, and so for anybody else who has one of those large iPhones or even a large Samsung device, it doesn't fit in these pockets terrifically well. You can get it to go in, but it becomes so cumbersome to take it out and put it back in that it wasn't worth it. It's easier just to throw it in my pocket. So that was too bad. I felt like that if they just made this maybe an inch bigger, it would have been so much better. It would have been able to fit my iPhone. And there's room, certainly, along this hip belt to be able to increase the size of this zippered pocket. Another thing that I think Tortuga would really benefit from is having a little bit more of a stiff back area here. So I've often talked about in my other pack reviews how important it is to have either a metal stay that allows the shape of the back to be maintained, or to have a plastic back that is stiff enough that it maintains the shape of the back. And while there's foam certainly in this Tortuga, and on a smaller pack it would probably do just fine, the problem you have is with a pack this large, when you, let's say I have this filled up and I want to cinch it along the side to compress it down, what that does is it causes the pack to curl like this. Okay, it's very easy for it. It's a malleable pack, and because it's so big, there's a lot of leverage for it to bend, like you can see right here. Now, in and of itself, that doesn't make any difference in terms of how comfortable it is, but the concern I had was putting my device in this area here. My device was actually the thing that was serving as the board, in a sense, to keep this thing from flexing. That scares me a little bit, to think that my iPad was in some ways forming the frame sheet for this bag. So I think it would have been better, and it's not, Tortuga isn't alone in this. I think all these large travel packs need to consider doing this. They need to put a stiffer back in these things, something that will allow it so that your device, whether it's your iPad or your laptop, won't be taking a lot of stress when you try to compress down this pack. One thing I will tell you, so some huge, beautiful things about this pack. Piece of cake for you to be able to tuck away the straps and get them out of the way when you want to stuff this in the under the seat in front of you. Very easy to take off the hip belts. This front area, though it may look all floppy, the beauty of this having a whole lot of volume is that it becomes incredibly usable. So I would be able to then, once I get it all compressed and all my clothing is in here and it seems all tight, this still has enough volume that I could put my headphones in there, I could put my water bottle temporarily in there, and most importantly, I could put my hip straps with the wallet inside of it into this compartment here. So it may look floppy right now because there's nothing in it, but when you're actually using it, this becomes an incredibly useful volume of space to use when you're moving around, going through the airport, having to take things in and out, etc. I would still love it if Tortuga had designed in a quick access pocket on the top where I could put my sunglasses and perhaps made that a fleece-lined little pocket in there. I think that would be really sweet. This is certainly a quick access pocket on the front, but as I said, since this became a major place for me to use, I used up this volume quite a bit when I was traveling. So you don't want to put something as delicate as your sunglasses in here that could get snapped if you have pressure on them. So this was useful for things like my wallet if I didn't have my hip straps on, but it's not terrifically safe for you to put your glasses in unless your glasses are in a case. And then in the interior, although they do show, I think on their website, people putting their sunglasses into this, again, if you have this thing filled up and it's toting, it's filling the volume of this bag, then putting your glasses in here, that's a kind of risky proposition. Say that it would be nice if this pocket was about 2 inches deeper. I think I even said this on my original review of this bag. This was 2 inches deeper and could accommodate my Hydro Flask entirely, and maybe even have this a little bit more elasticized, or maybe have a shock cord here that could pull it around the top of the water bottle. That would be really handy. So I don't think this is the greatest implementation of a water bottle pocket there. Okay, so there's my follow-up to using this thing for 4 days. I would say overall I'm happy that I did go with this bag. I think that it worked out really well, and with a couple of my own little self-modifications, perhaps putting on the load lifters on here and figuring out some way to change up the sternum strap, I think I can make this bag completely usable without any concerns. You actually might hear my son in the background because he's talking on the phone with his friends and I can't get him to be quieter. So if you hear the sound of a 12-year-old's voice, that's my son. So insofar as being usable as an everyday bag, I would say that my experiment failed miserably. As much as I really wanted this to be able to convert into an everyday, it was really cumbersome. I mean, it's way too big a pack, given the stuff that I had to carry around with me in Austin. So I ended up, sadly enough, running out to REI and picking up a really small 18-liter day pack that I was going to use, that I ended up using as my daily carry while I was there. And the reason being is that this thing is just a huge turtle shell. I mean, appropriately, this is a Tortuga. And it just, perhaps it's because it looked ridiculous, one, but also because it was just incredibly inefficient. I mean, I was carrying an iPad and my wallet in something that could carry 4 days worth of gear. It made no sense. In the end, this whole thing was about trying to figure out if I can have a single bag, and the reality is I'm not sure if that's really possible. And that's okay. I mean, the one thing I should tell you is that the little 18-liter REI bag, in fact, let me show that to you. I'll be right back. So this cute little guy, I mean, this is tiny, right? I would never, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't really use this as a daily carry. I would use this as a travel daily carry, but not as the daily carry that I need on an everyday basis for work. But as a travel bag, this thing is tiny and you can flatten it down entirely, so it takes up next to no room inside of this larger bag. So I ended up just stuffing it inside this larger bag when I was traveling between Austin and Connecticut. So again, I'm a little sad about that. I really thought I could get away with something that was a combination travel bag and daily carry, but unfortunately, I just don't think that I'm asking too much of my luggage. Okay, so there we have it. I would still say, folks, that as a travel bag, this Tortuga is awesome, and I really plan to use this whenever I take a weekend trip all the way to a 3-week trip somewhere. This thing is going to be what I take with me. And yes, it's not perfect, but when compared to the other options that are out there and available, I think it comes the closest to being a perfect travel bag. All right, folks, take a look at my other videos. If you're interested, As you know, I really focus more on crossover day packs, which are more like everyday carries. In fact, they are fundamentally everyday carries. It's just my nomenclature. And take a look at those other videos, and I hope you find them useful. See ya.